been over 12 years since the Sarah Jane Adventures left our screens due to the unfortunate passing of the late great Elizabeth Sladen, who played Sarah Jane. Unfortunately, the fifth and final series of the Sarah Jane Adventures was cut short due to her passing. But Big Finish Productions have been doing their own sequel stories to the Sarah Jane Adventures, branded as Rani Takes on the World, starring Anjali Mahindra as Rani Chandra, all grown up with Daniel Anthony as well, and also other characters from the Sarah Jane Adventures reprising their roles. We got this really great box set back in April called Beyond Banaman Road, and we now have the follow-up called The Revenge of Wormwood, which stars Samantha Bond as Mrs. Wormwood, who you may remember from the first series of the Sarah Jane Adventures. She is reprising her role here in this box set, which is comprised of 3 stories. We've got Time Schisms by Elizabeth Miles, we've got The Star-Crossed Diversion by Alison Winter, and The Ghost of Banaman Road by Jonathan Morris. So this story is notable because not only does it see the return of Samantha Bond, but it also sees the return of Tommy Knight as Sarah Jane's adoptive son, Luke. Also, it's Tommy Knight's birthday today. Happy birthday to you, Tommy Knight. A complete coincidence while I'm doing this live stream. It's just how the dice fell here. But this release was meant to come out in early 2024, but it got a earlier release of December 2023. So we got more Sarah Jane Adventures to celebrate in 2023, which is always a good thing. So this takes place several years after the Sarah Jane Adventures. More or less real time has passed. Rani and Clyde and Luke are now in their early 30s now, and Rani has a successful podcast called Rani Takes on the World, where she's a special investigator, similar to what Sarah Jane was doing. Clyde is an illustrator for comics, and now we discover that Luke is working for UNIT. And unfortunately, when strange time disturbances start happening across the UK, these time schisms in this first story by Elizabeth Miles, Rani takes on the case because she gets a tip from an enthusiastic fan of her podcast saying that there is a time traveller who works at my post office. She initially looks at the story and just thinks it's a bit of a crackpot conspiracy theory, but then she encounters Luke Smith, who is working for UNIT, and Luke tells Rani to start dropping the case. And the first rule of journalism is that if someone tells you to stop looking into something, it means that you're onto something. Let's play a clip from Time Schisms.
I can't believe you're here. Why are you here?
To see you.
I live in London.
I know.
Oh, UNIT sent you, didn't they? There's something in all this stuff about time travellers, isn't there?
I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to say one way or the other.
Come on, Luke, it's me.
I know, but things are different now. We're not kids anymore.
No, but we're still friends.
Of course we are. And, as a friend, I've a favour to ask you.
What?
I need you to leave this alone. I'm sorry.
I don't believe it. I thought you were going to ask for my help.
I am, in a way.
Right. It'd be really helpful if I just kept my nose out.
This is more difficult than I imagined.
Yeah, how did you imagine this would go? Rani, go away. This is too dangerous for you. Sure, Luke, no problem.
I thought you'd listen.
There's nothing more dangerous about whatever this is than 100 other situations we've been in. This is UNIT marking their territory. Now they're back on the scene, and they're getting you to do it for them.
I'm a member of UNIT. I was before.
And we were friends a long, long time before that. Tell me, if it was your mum, would you be warning her off?
That's not fair.
No, what's not fair is you using our friendship to try and manipulate me.
So while I did think that there was a little bit of an issue with the story of Luke Smith now working for UNIT, because it kind of emphasizes what I thought when I was watching The Giggle, that UNIT just becomes like the adoptive home of all of these. It becomes almost like a retirement home for companions and just somewhere where you can put modern companions where they can do their own thing and be involved in the story. I do think that it's a little bit of an, obviously what the TV show is doing, what the Big Finish are doing, they can kind of be considered as separate things, but it kind of makes sense that boy genius who is the son of Sarah Jane Smith starts working at UNIT. That kind of makes sense. I do think that Tommy Knight, out of the other actors who have been reunited for these box sets, does take a little bit longer to reacclimatize himself back to the role. I think over the course of this box set, he does find his footing. But in this first story, Time Schisms, it does kind of feel like he is not in the same room as all of the other actors. I don't know if this was recorded over lockdown, if this is in studio or whatever. That was just kind of the vibe I was getting. But what I did really appreciate about the Revenge of Wormwood box set overall, and also one thing I really loved about Beyond Banaman Road, both of these box sets really hit this point home that I really appreciated about them, was that it does feel like this is something that a CBBC audience could still engage with and enjoy. Like, Doctor Who sometimes goes a bit darker, and there's also Torchwood as well, but it does feel like if you have like a 10 or 11 year old fan of the Sarah Jane Adventures who has just started watching it and then gets to the end of the series, you could have them listen to these box sets, and tonally they are right on the mark. Like, these characters are like 10 years older and smarter and wiser. You know, less when it comes to Clyde, because he is always kind of like the big kid. But I hope you take my point, that these folks have grown up, but they are still in a family-friendly, child-friendly CBBC offshoot of the Doctor Who universe. And that's where we get the story for Time Schisms, where we get this really interesting premise of these anomalies in time, these historical figures who might be making their way through the time vortex and then landing in modern day England, and what do you do with them? And Unit are maybe chasing the more violent gun-ho solution, but then you've got Rani wanting to follow in the footsteps of Sarah Jane and go for the investigation, the non-violent approach, and the approach of empathy and helping people. And one thing that I particularly loved about Beyond Bannerman Road is that it emphasised the point that not all aliens who land on Earth are evil. Sometimes they need help. Sometimes they are strangers who are in a lost environment or whatever. It's just an approach that I really appreciate in this Big Finish series, Rani Takes on the World. And I do think that there's a point in the box set, it's towards the end, in the last one, The Ghost of Bannerman Road, where I kind of felt like Rani is kind of like a perfect character, in that she is incorruptible, where she cannot be manipulated. She will always have her moral compass perfectly pointed in the direction of what is just, of what is right, of what is moral. And at first I thought that might have been a little bit unrealistic for the character, and it means that she doesn't have that much in terms of dimensional conflict. But then I thought, no, if she's meant to be the spiritual successor of Sarah Jane Smith, with the exception of all of the times that Sarah Jane got hypnotized, Sarah Jane more or less was also an incorruptible figure. She was a perfect role model for younger children, particularly in her own spin-off show when it came back in the mid to late 2000s. She was an incorruptible figure, with the exception of the time she was explicitly brainwashed, but I hope you understand my meaning anyway. And it's why I think that this box set, these two box sets, do such a great job at continuing the legacy of the Sarah Jane Adventures, and the whole like non-violent solution and the position of choosing empathy and understanding and helping these refugees from time in this story, Time Schisms, is really good and really effectively well done. Now, we get to the star-crossed diversion, which is the second story by Alison Winter, where Rani and Clyde wind up on a train home after going to a strange alien nightclub, and they're on their way home, they fall asleep on the train, and they wind up in an alternate parallel dimension, very similar to the setting of Rise of the Cybermen and the Age of Steel. It's an alternative Earth where essentially there is world peace. The streets are quiet, there's very few cars, there's very little traffic. Nature has essentially started taking over the planet again, because all of the humans are indoors on their tablets playing games that have been donated to them so that they can get up onto the leaderboard and win prizes and win money and win vacations and win incredible experiences. Rani and Clyde go into a cafe and get a coffee, and they're witnessing all of the brainwashed masses sleepwalking their way into the apocalypse because they're all glued to their tablets. Let's play a clip from the star-crossed diversion.
All these devices come from the same manufacturer, Wellspring International. Look at them. They wouldn't notice if this joint burned down.
1 billion stars gets you a W star. That's what they're collecting. High scores, prizes, all different sorts of games. Maybe these devices are like those rubbish surfboard laptops.
No, these are legit. Whizzy. Super fast. Set up to keep you connected, so it says.
Connected to what?
Everything. According to the Wellspring website, there was a revolutionary initiative to get devices into every household and every pair of hands, so no one was left behind in school, work, or cut off from the community. Equal opportunities. Free Wi-Fi. Brave new world.
Not suspicious at all. Clyde?
Whoa.
Clyde? You went into a trance or something. Here you go. Enjoy. So, what's your favourite game, out of interest? Jude, was it? I'm Rani. This is Clyde.
Hi. Yeah. I just like dinosaur dodge. Like Space Invaders, but with meteors falling and dinosaurs, well, dodging them. You can be any dinosaur. I'm usually a Stegosaurus.
That sounds great. I'd be a T-Rex.
You'd be a Diplodocus.
You'd be a Velociraptor.
What's your dinosaur dodge score?
I just play for reward points. Sorry, I've got to go. My shift's over. Been a long night. Have a lovely day.
Suspicious.
Yep. Young people today.
The fact that Clyde Langer is the one saying young people today, but he's actually now in his early 30s. Oh, God. Oh, it makes me feel like I'm aging like that character in Indiana Jones who ages to death. At the end of the clip there, you heard Jude, played by Madison Bulliment, who is highly involved in the plot, but there's a massive weird plot hole that kind of goes unexplained or unexplored in this story. What is that character doing in the cafe, considering everything we know about them later on in the story? It's very strange. It was a plot hole that I was waiting for them to explain, and they just never got around to it. Madison Bulliment is really good. Like, they've been in quite a few Big Finish box sets over the past 12 months, and they've been really good in all of them. But in this one, it kind of felt like it was trying very deliberately to repeat the past successes of the Sarah Jane Adventures TV show. The idea of them going onto a different, empty world happened in a Sarah Jane Adventures story called The Empty Planet. There's the idea of memories in order to reconstruct reality, very similar to the death of the Doctor. It does feel like a little bit of a greatest hits of the Sarah Jane Adventures, but it's with a grown-up Rani and Clyde in a parallel dimension, including stuff like what we've got from Rise of the Cybermen of the Age of Steel from Doctor Who proper. Now, it's a good story, and someone in the chat mentioning it's all about electronics are bad. Now, I will say that the star-crossed diversion does take a much more nuanced approach for it, where Rani and Clyde find themselves in a parallel universe where Earth is essentially sleepwalking into a massive disaster because they're just so apathetic. It's not the fact that they're glued to their screens, technology bad, social media. It's what it engenders into the society, in terms of apathy and their approach to life in the world and the environment around them. It's way more in-depth and way more nuanced than you'd expect from this type of material. It's not just, tablets bad. There's a great line early on where Clyde is looking up the history, and it's the idea that they didn't want any children to be left behind. They wanted everybody to have access to technology, and that's a really good cause, but then it becomes monopolized, and then it gets maybe it was the intention from the beginning to corrupt the young and stuff, but the intentions are good at the start, or at least they're perceived as good from the start. It's a good story. These box sets are produced by Emily Cook, who you may remember was part of the Doctor Who lockdown stories, and Emily Cook also did a Rose Tyler Dimensioned canon box set called Trapped, which featured in a parallel universe a non-binary actor playing that universe's version of Rose. And then we have the same thing here in The Revenge of Wormwood with Madison Bulliment and the Star-Crossed Diversion, where they're essentially playing this universe's version of Luke, and they are also a non-binary actor. It's one of those things where, if I had a nickel for every time Emily Cook produced a box set that had a parallel version of a main Doctor Who companion character played by a non-binary actor in a parallel world, I would have 2 nickels. That's not a lot of nickels, but it's strange that it's happened twice. We get the finale, because this is a 3-parter, essentially, where there is the sort of undercurrent throughout it of what's happening here, are the Bane returning, is Mrs. Wormwood returning, all of these hints throughout. And we have The Ghost of Banaman Road by Jonathan Morris, where Rani and Clyde turn up at Banaman Road one day because Sarah Jane, when she passed away, she left it to Rani, and UNIT have designated 13 Banaman Road as SJ Alpha. That's their code name for the building, aka SJA Sarah Jane Adventures. Mwah! I loved that detail. So good. Anyway, They turn up at 13 Banaman Road only to find that unit have cordoned it off because security footage have shown that there's essentially a ghost on the premises. There's CCTV footage showing somebody walking through the walls of the building and nearby. There's people going missing, people who have regrets in their life, and it seems that Mrs. Wormwood might be manipulating these people behind the scenes. Clyde, who does have regrets because has a massive crush on Rani Chandra, goes to sleep and spots the woman of his dreams. Not Rani, but Mrs. Wormwood. Let's play a clip from The Ghost of Banaman Road.
This is just a dream. All I have to do is wake up. Wake up. Oh! Thank heavens. What a nightmare.
Not quite.
You're still here. You shouldn't be here.
I'm not really here. Only you can see me, Clyde.
But I'm awake, aren't I?
Yes, you're awake. But what happens in a dream doesn't always stay in a dream.
I don't understand. What have you done?
You are now mine to command.
You... What do you want?
Oh, don't worry. I'll make sure you don't come to any harm. You are far too useful for that.
Useful?
I have a little job that needs doing. Now, get out of bed.
This is what the Revenge of Wormwood box set is culminating towards, where Clyde ends up being a servant, a puppet of Mrs. Wormwood, involving stuff with Unit and the Black Archive, and Rani has to try and rescue him. Luke's also on the case as well, because he's working with Unit. This is basically the three main characters, sans Sarah Jane, of the Sarah Jane adventures, coming together in order to defeat Mrs. Wormwood once again. I think that Samantha Bond is really great in this story. Like, you heard the clip, she's terrific, and she's stepped into this role really perfectly, like she never left. But when you listen to the story, it's kind of like, oh, this is her plan, it's just this, and it's very, very easy to stop her, and this is all she has to do. I don't know, it felt like it wasn't a very justifiable story to bring this character back. It felt like maybe they should have done something a little bit more grandiose, maybe something a little bit more interesting than what we got. I don't know. It felt like it was a little bit anticlimactic. I liked the character interactions and the dynamics, and there's a really good idea in a presence manipulating people who have regrets in their life and changing the timelines and erasing them, and there's the ghosts of them that are still wandering the earth and walking through the scenery and caught on CCTV. That's a really good premise, but did you need Mrs. Wormwood to do that? Did you need the Bane to do that? I don't know. It kind of felt like, oh, we're doing a sequel series to the Sarah Jane Adventures. Let's bring back Samantha Bond. Let's bring back Mrs. Wormwood. Oh, what should we have her do? Shrug. It kind of felt a little bit like that. It's a bit disappointing. Jonathan Morris is a really good writer, and he's really good in terms of, like, meeting a brief. Like, he's got an upcoming box set where he was given a brief for the upcoming Fugitive of the Daleks with the First Doctor, which I've listened to already. I can't review it because it's under embargo, but that is like a mad brief for a story, and he admirably hits it, and he does an incredible job with that story, Fugitive of the Daleks with the First Doctor. However, I think with this one, it's like you need to reunite everybody on 13 Banaman Road and also bring back Mrs. Wormwood, but she's in some weird sort of temporal states because of where we left her at the end of Series 1 all those years ago. And his hands were kind of tied here, I think. Basically, there's just not a lot for Mrs. Wormwood to do, and while Samantha Bond does great with the material, she's kind of left floundering a little bit, unfortunately. There's just not that much material for her to work with. She also has shockingly few interactions with Luke, considering that she does consider herself to be Luke's actual mother, but there's like, it's all about her and Clyde, and that's fine, that's a good dynamic to work with, but it feels like you could have done both. You could have multitasked them. Like, it's sort of like hand waved away, like, oh, I'm talking to you, Clyde, because I tried Luke and he's too smart, and that's kind of it. I don't know, it kind of felt like we should have had that little reunion scene, even if it was just a scene or just a small segment. I don't know. And also, the longer that these box sets go on for, the more episodes we have, the elephant in the room of what happened to Sky is just going to become a little bit more harder to ignore or deal with, especially when in one of the stories in this box set, they do directly mention Sky. What happened to Sky? Where is she? Fair enough if you can't get the actress back. I don't even know if the actress who played Sky back in 2011 is still in the industry or working or even wants to return. That's fine. But maybe explain where she went. I don't know. Feels a little bit strange. Now, that's not to say that The Revenge of Wormwood is a bad box set, far from it, but it doesn't quite feel as confident and assured in itself as Beyond Bannerman Road was. This might end up making my top 10 of the year, because it is just such a great, faithful, and true to the spirit of the Sarah Jane Adventures sequel series that I just really, really loved it. And, you know, Here Today by Joseph Lidsfer is like a 10 out of 10 Sarah Jane Adventure story. It's so good. And while there are great moments and great character dynamics in The Revenge of Wormwood, and it carries that spirit forward, it just isn't, it does feel a little bit like a step down. It's got good intentions, and there's some really great premises here. There's also a really great performance by Milo Tuomi as Crispin Blake in the Star-Crossed Diversion. Really great voice, like a proper good game show voice. I loved it so much. He's really great in this box set. But as a box set overall, it's just it's a trilogy of decent stories. It's a decent box set. If you enjoyed the Sarah Jane Adventures and you want to hear these characters again, you'll be well done with The Revenge of Wormwood. But you know, I still think Beyond Bannerman Road is the superior sequel box set. And if you haven't listened to that yet, I do highly recommend listening to it. It's really good, really solid.